I posted a call earlier this week on Patreon for your draft-related questions, and you guys did not disappoint.
The first question is both micro and macro at the same time. It's micro about Ashton Gentry and macro about whether or not you should take a running back in the top 10 overall. This question is from Yako Warner. He says, you kind of discussed this in the NFL Stock Exchange video, but it would be interesting to compare the process of Saquon Barkley at number 2 and Ashton Gentry at the top 6. And as he put it, the top 6 pick is with the Raiders. The reason he mentions top 6 is that if the Raiders took Gentry, he doesn't think it's a bad pick because there wouldn't be a blue-chip prospect someone would want to trade up for. Now, I'm going to break this question into parts because it gives me the chance to talk about my philosophy on how to build an effective running game, which obviously the Raiders did not have last year at all. If you want to run the ball, your offensive line sets the floor, and your running back sets the ceiling. We've seen this throughout history. There have been a whole bunch of elite running backs that have given their team's average running games almost by themselves, but their team's ceiling was still an average running game, simply because they had an elite running back. But you don't see a truly elite running game without first raising the floor with the offensive line. You need to build the floor first, then you can build the house on top of it, and then finish it off with a nice shiny roof, which in this case would be Saquon Barkley or Ashton Gentry. And there are some numbers to back that up, by the way. If you go back to the Eagles' running game pre- and post-Saquon, we have some charts to go along with this as well. In 2023, the last year before Barkley came to town, they were third in the NFL in yards before contact per attempt, which is a measure of how well your offensive line displaces the defensive line and gives your running back room to work before they even get touched. That was 1.7 yards before contact per attempt. That's a really, really good number. And even though they were third in that stat, they were 9th overall in yards per attempt at 4.4, which is solid, but not spectacular. Fast forward to the 2024 chart, and you can see they were still elite in yards before contact per attempt because their offensive line was amazing. They were second in the NFL at 1.9, although if you take out QB runs like the tush push and just reduce it to running back runs, they were at 2.2, which was first, but we'll just go with the overall number. They were second at 1.9, so even better than 2023, but their overall yards per attempt jumped to 5.2, second in the NFL. That's a massive, massive difference. So their floor was still elite, but their ceiling got raised because they brought in a better running back than what they had before, which was Miles Sanders and DeAndre Swift. They were fine, but not really equipped to maximize the great offensive line they had. Now, let's flip to the other side of the Saquon saga. Let's look at the Giants in 2017, before Saquon even got there. Back in 2017, they were pretty much dead middle in the NFL in terms of yards before contact per attempt, which is again a basic measure of how good your offensive line is at run blocking. They were 14th at 1.4 yards per attempt before contact. Now, even despite being an average run blocking line, they were below average in terms of yards per carry, with just 4.0 yards per carry. So their floor was decent, but their ceiling was really, really low because their running back room wasn't that good. Fast forward to Saquon's rookie year, and they were still 15th in the NFL in terms of yards before contact per attempt, but they jumped all the way up to 6th in yards per carry at 4.7. So Saquon by himself raised their ceiling per attempt by 0.7 yards, which may not sound like much, but that is a lot. He single-handedly raised them from 19th to 6th in yards per carry with a similarly effective offensive line. But as time went on, their offensive line degraded, and I'd say degraded quickly, and then eventually we got to 2023, his touched him. And obviously, they were 29th in yards per attempt that year as well. So the floor was basically underground at that point, and Saquon did what he could, but it just wasn't working, which is why the Giants were thinking, are we really going to pay a running back when our offensive line sucks so much that even arguably the best one in the NFL isn't making a difference? Taking all that into account, and I know it's a whole bunch of numbers I just threw at you, and a bunch of nerdy math stuff, but trust me, it does make sense. You can now take that argument and apply it to the Raiders' position this year, and that's why there's a legitimate debate about whether they should even consider taking Ashton Gentry at 6. We can bring in the same chart we looked at from 2024, and you see the Raiders are basically on an island of suck all the way at the bottom left. So they were one of the worst run-blocking teams in the NFL last season. They were only at 1 yards before contact per attempt, which was 26th in the league,
and they were dead last in yards per carry at just 3.6.
Now, you can attribute that to, of course, having bad run blocking and a very low ceiling from a very below average running back room. So you'd think, okay, you add Ashton Gentry into that room, he raises their ceiling, but again, we get right back to the same argument, raises their ceiling by how much, right? If the offensive line still sucks. So the question that the new regime in Vegas, and even I would say Raiders fans, have to answer is the offensive line going to be better in 2025?
Moving JPJ to center and replacing Andre James, who, in my opinion, was the weak link on that offensive line and the reason why their run blocking sucked so much, does moving JPJ to center and probably investing in a new starting left guard on day 2, is that enough to get this team into at least an average run blocking line that Ashton Gentry could benefit from?
I don't know. I truly don't know.
But I do think it's an easy argument to make that Andre James not being there anymore is more addition by subtraction because this team was literally dead last in terms of yards per carry and A-gap runs last year, and also dead last on B-gap runs.
But hey, who's counting?
But if you're looking at off-tackle runs, they were 12th.
So it's not like they couldn't run the ball, they just couldn't run the ball inside, basically at all.
So again, new left guard, new center, new running back.
Maybe that becomes a great run game. I have no idea. Again, I just think it comes down to having a different philosophical approach here.
But ultimately, my philosophy is build the floor first, worry about the ceiling after that.
We'll see what the Raiders do.